Vanderbilt University, November 2015. 200 students rise up to protest the white privilege and microaggressions of the racist, bigoted Vanderbilt administration. The protesters don't offer any specific examples of discrimination, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that they feel victimized. The student group did apologize, but then they added another charge against the administration. The needs of students with disabilities on this campus are also marginalized. Seriously, this is not a joke. On the college campus today, feelings rule facts and victims are heroes. To the left, so long as you feel victimized, you're a victim. Even if you have never actually experienced discrimination, you've surely been targeted by microaggressions. Here's a trick the left plays to justify their violence. First, they say it's okay to punch Nazis. Then they say that every conservative, in fact, everybody they disagree with, is a Nazi. But here's the biggest problem with the left's argument. They're based on feelings, not facts. I'm Ben Shapiro, editor of the Daily Wire for Prager University.
This video is partly a commentary on Christian behavior and partly a satire of Ben Shapiro's Facts Don't Care About Your Feelings video. Thus, while there's some truth to some of what I'm saying, you'll hear me make many crude generalizations as part of my satirical critique of how Shapiro so broadly paints the left. In other words, if I ever sound like an asshole, it's because I'm imitating Ben Shapiro, who's an asshole. The United States of America, 2014. Countless thousands of Christians rise up to protest the horrible discrimination and persecution they face at the hands of America's bigoted, atheistic government and public schools. The protesters don't offer any specific examples of persecution. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that they feel persecuted. Then, suddenly, pastors' sermons in Houston are subpoenaed. All hell breaks loose. Full of righteous indignation, Christian reactionaries rush to Facebook to denounce the intrusive violation of church-state separation, because suddenly church-state separation exists and becomes important in their minds. Go figure. Level-headed fact-checkers investigate and find that nobody was targeting pastors or churches. Nobody was cracking down on anti-homosexual preaching as hate speech or in any other way trying to police what the pastors preached about. They were simply trying to determine the extent to which pastors were using their tax-exempt organizations for the purpose of political organizing, including soliciting signatures for a petition. And it turns out that even then, the mayor criticized the effort as overly broad and restricted its scope. In the end, it turned out the whole thing was just a preliminary motion filed by a junior staff member who was immediately fired. Or is that last part actually true? Who knows? Because if you're anything like the audience of PragerU, I can say whatever I want as long as it sounds satisfying to you, and you'll swallow it all in one gulp without citations. How do your feelings feel about that fact? But the unquestionable fact remains that Christians were overreacting to something they had no idea about whatsoever, and were thus blowing a minor, reasonable if arguably questionable legal action out of proportion, dead set on construing it as a sign of large-scale persecution against Christians. When the facts about this came out, Christians did not apologize. Instead, in the very same year, they made a movie called God's Not Dead, which insinuated that Christians on college campuses are being harassed and marginalized, complete with a totally implausible story about a college professor who makes his students deny God's existence. Seriously, this is not a joke. Within the Christian community today, feelings rule facts and the persecuted are blessed. According to the Christian right, any reaction to any Christian stance is considered persecution. They start by claiming that all Christians in America are victims of the secular worldview. They're all victims of the atheists and liberals. Then come creationists. They're all victims of the evolutionists. Then come homophobes and anti-abortionists and guys who think women should be barefoot and pregnant. They're all victims of our decent and egalitarian society. But what if you haven't been persecuted by anybody? It doesn't matter. To the Christian, so long as you feel persecuted, you're a victim. The fact that you can go online and look up a story about Christians anywhere ever experiencing any pushback for anything they've done, no matter how aggressive the Christian was actually being, and no matter how overblown or simply wrong the rumor is, in your mind you're being persecuted. How's it work? Easy. A rumor flares up. If it's not the one about subpoenaed signatures, it could be, say, the one about a fire chief who lost his job just for writing a Christian book about homosexuality. You see this fact pop up on your Facebook feed, and immediately feel the government is going to clamp down on you just for expressing your religious beliefs. It doesn't matter that the chief had, in his role as a supervisor, distributed the material to his subordinates and was implicitly, if not openly, proselytizing. It also doesn't matter that he forced them to sign a pledge not to be gay and routinely check their lockers for effeminate clothing or other signs of dandiness. Or maybe part of that isn't true. But which part? And when in that recounting did I just start flat lying? Who cares? Because Christians won't check my work. Their version of fact-checking is just immediately rejecting everything that interferes with a feeling that they're being persecuted. Facts don't matter to Christians, just feelings. So if any kind of Christian write-up claims the chief was fired for writing a Christian book, Christians will automatically accept the story and feel persecuted. This is because stories of persecution are like porn to Christians. And nobody likes when someone blocks their access to porn. If a Christian persecution story were grossly misrepresented or even flatly made up, they'd never know it because they never wanted to know it. If one were more or less true but it was just a minor official who overstepped his or her bounds and was immediately corrected, all Christians will remember is the part of how someone, who serves in their minds as a representative of some monolithic secular government, persecuted Christians. The fact that the story is really one about how the government self-corrected and actually protected Christians is utterly forgotten, because facts like that interfere with your feeling that America is one wrong step away from throwing Christians to lions. So each of these stories gets added to an ongoing narrative that makes the Christian feel persecuted even if he or she is, well, plainly not. And let's not forget all the little microaggressions. How many times do these Christian snowflakes feel all violated just because someone said something like, "Oh, no thank you, I don't actually go to church," or, "Hey, could you make me a cake?" In short, everybody's a victim, except, of course, atheists. Also, people of all religions that aren't Christianity. And if you're guilty of anything as simple as disagreeing with Christianity, you must be confronted, even if this confrontation involves actual aggression like, say, an inquisition or a crusade. Here's how they justify their aggression. First, they say it's okay to burn a witch. Then they say that everybody who's not a Christian is a Satanist and thus, you got it, a witch. And so they burn everybody because they're all witches, and in the end God's going to anyway, so who cares? But here's the real problem, Christians. Your feelings aren't based on facts. The fact of the matter is, America isn't out to get you. About 3/4 of Americans identify as Christian, and over 60% are a regular part of a congregation. And what about politics? You're actually overrepresented there, with almost 90% of the 116th Congress and practically every president in U.S. history identifying to some extent as some type of Christian. Now, are they all Christian? Probably not. But the fact that they have to identify as one to function in politics tells you something, right? The fact is, any Christian can succeed in our society, nay, have a huge advantage in it, if they'll just do these 3 things. 1. Don't be willfully ignorant. Insisting the earth is only 6,000 years old, or that evolution claims monkeys gave birth to humans, is off-putting to others and will inhibit your interactions with them. 2. Don't misrepresent or belittle others. Not all Muslims are terrorists. Atheists do not worship Satan or suppress their knowledge of God out of a willful desire to sin, and other Christians who interpret Scripture differently than you are not trying to disobey God. When you tell people things like this, you're being a jackass, and you can't get angry when they stop wanting to talk to you. 3. Don't discriminate. This one alone will solve 90% of your problems. If you don't refuse basic services to those you disagree with, you won't end up in legal battles over your right to refuse them service. It's as simple as that. So Christians, stop worrying about your feelings, and start worrying a little more about being a good person, avoiding willful ignorance, and not being a douche to non-Christians and then complaining when they complain. As a member of the dominant religion in a society that's constantly flirting with theocracy, you're holding all the cards, so you might be surprised how friendly people will be whenever you're friendly to them. Assuming that's what you actually want. This is Prophet of Zod with Zod University. This program was made possible by a grant from S.R. Foxley, Bob Generic, and Q, and by the generous support of viewers like you. If you wish to join them in pledging to this channel, please find a link to the Prophet of Zod Patreon below.